Hello again. This is Tanisa Montgomery, and you are listening to Measure of Royalty. Yes, I'm so excited about this episode because I feel like today we're going to kind of get into things that maybe are more a bit personal, but I think that they'll be very relatable. So, something that has been coming up frequently this week is the idea of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is when we feel like who we are, or maybe even the degree we have, or the training that we have isn't enough. And somehow we feel like, I don't really belong here. These people that are here with me, they're smarter than me. They're better than me. They're greater than me. They're further along than I am. So I want to talk about imposter syndrome because it is so prevalent in professional people. As professionals, we work really hard to be up to par, to be up to standard, to catch up to other people. Now, I want to be clear that there are some times when we have imposter syndrome and it's accurate because it's our inadequacies actually revealing themselves. And that's something completely different than imposter syndrome. When our inadequacies reveal themselves, and it's like, yeah, I was at the bottom of my class and I haven't read a book on psychology in 3 or 4 years. And I didn't really do that well in the training course that I recently took. But yet I'm going to take on this new group of clients or this new group of patients or welcome this new community of experiences in to sit with me. And I haven't really prepared myself to do that work. Now, that's simply being inadequate. And that's not what imposter syndrome is. Imposter syndrome is when we are actually adequate for the job, when we are actually prepared, when we spent time studying and we read and we pay attention and we have colleagues that we regularly converse with about concerns and anxieties and we are working through things as we should. I think that applies to whatever professional career capacity you're in, or even if you're in the process of getting higher education and you feel like, man, when I get out there in the world, I hope that I'm qualified. When I speak to people in my class, it sounds like they know the book better than me, or they're able to speak out more in class and I'm more reserved, or I don't feel like I have that answer. When people ask questions, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad they asked that question. I want you to think about this. If someone is asking a question in a classroom, that does not mean that they aren't struggling with their ability to feel like they got a hold of something. More think of it as, I'm glad they asked the question. That means that I'm not the only one who isn't getting it, who doesn't understand just yet. And so maybe my expectation of what I should know and what I do know do not match. Imposter syndrome is something far greater than that. Imposter syndrome is, I'll take myself for example. A few days ago, I had this idea in my mind that I was trying on a pair of shoes that were too big for me. And as I put my feet in the shoes were too large. And I felt, oh my gosh, I'm stepping into shoes that are too big for me. I don't completely understand everything that I feel would make me feel that I fit in these shoes. Now, is that my mind saying that? Or is that reality saying that? Imposter syndrome is simply my mind saying that and not my reality. Let me break that down a bit further. So as a professional, as a mental health counselor, working with people every day, helping people find out who they are, sometimes it feels like I don't really have an answer for that. But you know what makes the difference is when I don't have the answer, I find the answer. I actually and literally say, you know what? I'm going to have to check on that. I'm going to ask a few colleagues. I'm going to see what they're doing. I'm going to do some research and I'll get back to you on that. And that is the one thing that you do when you are a professional and you know that your opinion about a subject, your heart, your drive, your determination, your ambition is wisdom. And it's from your knowledge. And it's not that you're trying to impress the person that you're sitting across with or making a business deal with or whatever the subject may be. The wisest person in the room is always going to ask a question about the things that they don't understand. It's the fool that pretends that they know everything and falls short. That's an actual inadequacy in a career field. So when we're sitting with ourselves and we're thinking, my goodness, I'm putting on these shoes and these shoes are too big. Do I feel the shoes? Well, I mean, maybe it's our irrational thought process getting in the way and trying to tell us that we aren't good enough or we aren't positioned or we shouldn't touch this business deal or we shouldn't move forward because we don't have all of the knowledge that might be necessary to make it successful. And I think there's value in listening to that voice. But I also think there is great value in finding out if that's a rational voice or an irrational voice. And sometimes we have these thoughts that are triggered by our past failures and our past flaws. And in this moment, we might be completely and totally equipped to do what is before us. But because we fell short in the past, we think maybe we shouldn't touch that issue. But if we can think about that in the sense of when I fell short in the past, what did I do? Did I sit with that? Did I learn from that? Did I seek wisdom and understanding? Did I seek counsel from someone who is wiser than me, someone who could offer me some advice, someone who can show me how they process this information and came to a different conclusion? Or am I sitting with that and saying, well, maybe I'll get it right next time? Because, right, once again, that's an inadequacy and that's foolishness. Because what happens is then we end up in a cycle of failure. We should learn from our mistakes and build upon them. And then, the next time that same incident comes before us, we might feel a little bit shaky. Maybe we'll get it wrong again. But the difference will be that we've now done the work that is necessary. I would never sit across from someone who has trauma, who has flashbacks, who has PTSD or chronic PTSD or, different types of excessive concerns without having done the work. In fact, there have been clients that I have had to say no to. And when I say no, I make a referral. So not just like, nope, can't see you, bye. But if I know that I am inadequate in an area, meaning someone needs a therapist that can work with them about getting the gastric sleeve or a gastric bypass. And I've had this happen where I felt like I was a good fit because they had past trauma, because I'm a trauma therapist. I'm licensed in that. I'm certified in that. And I continue to do education around trauma and trauma abuses. And I am very diligent about keeping my certifications and my knowledge on those things fresh and up to date. Well, the state requires it, but anyway, so when this individual came in, I was so well equipped to manage so many of the other components of their condition because their overeating, their excessive eating came from a history of trauma. The problem for me was that I felt ill-equipped to advise them about their health and safety I just didn't, there's not much that I know about that particular area. And so it felt like wisdom to refer them to someone who actually works in weight management, not a nutritionist, but a colleague of mine who's a therapist, whom herself got gastric bypass. So instead of me who had no knowledge of the anxiety and the fear and the worry and the guilt and how being triggered by therapy could cause overeating. And going into a process like that takes a lot of strength and a lot of other things that I had no real knowledge of and no way to support. Now, there's another way you could, as a therapist, I could have gone the extra mile and done research and gathered information and positioned myself to be of service. But I felt like it was so far out of the realm of who I wanted to become clinically. And I had a great referral. So I submitted that I was not the clinician for this individual, but that I had 2 or 3 recommendations for them that I thought would be able to serve them better because they had an experience that was unique to them and to the particular client. So wisdom has taught me to refer out. And I don't try to take on things and cases that I don't believe that I can be of great service. Now, with certain conditions, you want to make sure that you know, because when you are relating to clients, if you don't have a firm grasp and a firm foundation, a firm understanding, then you do more harm than good. So it can kind of get hairy if you're in a gray area. This is where I would say this is not imposter syndrome, but maybe you need a mentor. Maybe you need further training. Maybe you need to do some reading, get some books, and equip yourself in that area. The only way to get away from the imposter syndrome, and sometimes you'll still have flashes. I still will have flashes when I work with certain people about an imposter syndrome. I'll have a flash and I'll be like, is this going to go in a direction that I won't be able to manage? But then I just remind myself that because I have chosen a particular service that I focus on, a particular niche market, focusing on traumas, then I always remind myself that if it does go in a direction or a twist that I am unsure of, I can always consult another clinician. I can always do further education. I can always ask the client how they feel about moving to another clinician for a particular portion of services that I believe that person might be more equipped in. And I have experienced this reducing the imposter syndrome. When I combat every anxiety with the truth, it reduces my anxiety. So the same goes for imposter syndrome. When you feel like I am ill-equipped to be the mother that I think that my son deserves me to be, then you combat that with the truth. And not like in an over excessive parenting way where you start doing everything like organizing their shoes and washing and folding their clothes and putting their clothes away. I guess I'm thinking about myself. My son is 13. He can do all of those things for himself. But everything should be age appropriate. So if I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not a good enough mother, then I'm not going to overly obsess over being a perfect mother for my son. Instead, I'm going to actually sit down and evaluate if that is a rational or an irrational statement. Now, it could be rational because I spend all of my time at work, and then when I'm not at work, I'm on the phone, and when I'm not on the phone, I'm at the club, and when I'm not at the club, I'm with my man. Okay, so that's not imposter syndrome. That's me falling short as a parent, and I have to take responsibility for that. But if the opposite is true, that when my son needs something, I'm always available, if I'm on the phone and an accident happens or an emergency happens, I jump off the phone. If he needs to talk to me about a problem that he's having with friends at school, then I make myself available. If he wants to just sit and watch television with me, then I decide, okay, from this time to this time, we can watch TV together and we'll spend time together doing that. Now, one of my favorite things to do with my son is watch something that we can debate about. Well, it's not really my favorite thing to do. It's his favorite thing to do. And, and I love a good debate. So he and I always bond on things where we can pause whatever we're watching. Usually it's something on YouTube. We pause it and we have conversations about like, why did he do that? Or why would he say that? Or whatever the point is. Usually it's pretty biblically founded. My son is... He's making his way to becoming a very important Bible scholar. So he's always like, has a comment, or we do commentary on different things we see on YouTube or different TV shows that we're watching. And so that's one of our favorite things to do. But if I was never making myself available to him and all of a sudden I started to feel like, oh, I'm a bad mom, I'm not paying attention to my son, then I need to evaluate that. And if it's true, then I need to change that. And that what was perceived as imposter syndrome would go away, because it was actually the inadequacy that was actually there. Sometimes we can also hyper focus on one area and leave all the other areas out. And then we say, well, I'm doing my best with making sure that dinner's on the table and that the house is clean and that he gets to go to fun activities on the weekends and making plans with his friends and things like that and driving him here and there. Okay. But he's failing the 5th grade. He's failing in certain classes in middle school or high school. Then I'm hyper focused on being the perfect parent in the eyes of others or in the eyes of my child. That's where we get into a wrong space. And that's certainly not imposter syndrome. That would simply be our inadequacies revealing themselves. We spend too much time wanting things to appear like everything is good, where majority of the world sees, right? Maybe our church family sees him clean and dressed well. Maybe the other parents will see that he's happy and he's always available and hanging out with his friends and has a great social life. Maybe he thinks that he's got it made because he gets to go out every weekend and you spend money on him and he has great clothes and great shoes and all the things he wants. But when it comes to discipline, when it comes to education, when it comes to the things that really matter, his spiritual well-being, you're not nourishing them, or I'm not nourishing them. And that's not imposter syndrome. That's something we should investigate. Is this imposter syndrome, or are my inadequacies revealing themselves? How do I shift that? Right? Going back to that idea that I'm trying these shoes on. The shoes are too big. I don't feel these shoes. The question becomes, if this is my inadequacy revealing itself, then how do I fill the shoes? What more do I need in my toolkit so that I fill the shoes? Because they're my shoes and it's my burden of figuring out how to fill the void. Right? So we have to wonder at that. What are the things that I need to do so that I am filling the shoes that I've been given? What, by life, by circumstance, by God? How do I fill these shoes? Now that's inadequacy. But imposter syndrome would be like your foot is the perfect size. The shoe is perfect. Everything's perfect. And it's like, yeah, but something is just off here, right? That's imposter syndrome. And so how do we kill imposter syndrome? We acknowledge the truth. My son has good grades. My son is going on to the next grade. My son is graduating high school. My son has activities with his friends, and he has responsibilities in the household, and he has a developing relationship with the Lord, and he has friendships and relationships, and he has respect and honor, integrity and valor, and he knows how to wash his own clothes and organize his own shoes. And I don't have to do those things for him because there is a balance of expectation placed on him. And so now I can just say the facts are that maybe I'm just tripping. And now I've heard the facts from myself, and I think I'm doing fine. And then you take a rest. You go get yourself a cup of coffee and you relax. Because now you're no longer competing with a phony, fictitious idea of who you're supposed to be. And you can take that and you can apply that to all industries, to all professions. It's the same thing. We all have many roles. We all have many hats that we wear. And you can take that same concept. We can take that same concept and apply it everywhere. What about friendships? Apply it there too. Am I a good friend? Now that might be your inadequacy showing, or it might be that you're having some imposter syndrome. My friends are so much better than me. And you thinking of one friend who always pays for everything, who always calls you, who always texts you, who always reaches out to you, who's always comforting you and always coming to your house, always inviting you places. Well, is that imposter syndrome, or is there something going on within her that's making you feel inadequate, which is actually trying to mirror her inadequacies? Once again, we simply just need to look at the facts. Tell yourself the facts, accept whatever the truth is, and do something with that truth. Again, this is Tanisa Montgomery. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. This was another episode, Measure of Royalty. If you want to have any further connection or contact with us, you can check out our website at remnanthousecounseling.com. You can email me at tanisam@remnanthousecounseling.com, or you can leave a message here. I hope that you like this, share, and comment, and I'll speak to you later.